First of all, I'm writing poetry in English only, although I'm Japanese person, and then so kind of rare case in Japan. And then not many Japanese poets try to write poetry in English. So I have not so many poet friends like me in Japan, but I have, and then one of them is Yoko Danno. She was here and in this, writers and translators house maybe 2 years ago, and she had a very good time with Ieva and many other staff members working here, and she had a very great experience during 1 or 2 weeks. During 1 or 2 weeks stay in this country, and after she came back, she said, "Yeah, Goro, I mean, this Poetry Days festival in Latvia is really nice, and it always happens every year. So maybe next year, why don't you go? And I can just send the kind of my own recommendation to Poetry Days staff members, and maybe you can try." There is a very interesting house for writers and translators in a city called Ventspils. So maybe you can give it a try too, for that too. And then so at that time I had no idea about Latvia. I had no geological idea about where it is. I have never been to the Baltic region.
How it started that you write in English? So you need to see English dreams, you need to think in English, no?
Well, actually, when I try to write something poetical in English, first of all, I try to come up with a kind of rough idea, which comes up in Japanese in my mind. Or Japanese is my native language, so the rough idea always comes up in Japanese. But I don't write it down in Japanese. It just comes up in my mind in Japanese, in my mind only. So then I start to kind of change this idea into English one. And then many people ask me why I stick to English writing, especially when I try to write poetry. And well, I have a few reasons, actually, very clear reasons. One is that, first of all, if I keep writing poetry in Japanese, the only audience I can get is Japanese people only. But if I write something poetical just in English, I can get, for instance, a person like you. I can get okay, I mean, if my Japanese poetry is translated into English or into Latvian or into some other language by somebody else, then maybe they can also go to those audiences. But I need translators, right? And I don't want to have my poetry somehow translated. So I just want to show my own works as they are to my readers. So
which means you need to have perfect English for that.
Actually, I don't know. I don't know whether the English language I'm using for poetry is perfect or not. But anyway, I don't like to just rely on somebody else as translators. I mean, so it's like kind of self-translation. I'm now translating my Japanese idea into English. It's within my own system. One of my other reasons why I write poetry in English is that, for instance, well, I think it may be a kind of easy for you to imagine this kind of thing, but if I love the Japanese language, I love Japanese literature, but I don't like my own Japanese writing. Everything I just write in Japanese seems to me a very cliche like of thing, full of cliches. So, well, everything I write, every kind of poetical thing I write seems a kind of like a very ordinary, not anything new in that. So like, I cannot like them.
But see, maybe it is true.
Maybe it is true. But see, that's okay. But if I write those same things in English,
They seem to be smarter. So.
No, but not smart, but they suddenly seem fresh to me. And then also, because this language is my foreign language, sometimes sometimes what I write in English is not in my control.
Yeah, because
sometimes my grammar is strange. Sometimes my phrase and expressions are very strange.
And it's maybe more free because you are not oppressed by some grammar rules that you should know.
That's right. And in case of the Japanese language, I know the rules. I know all the grammatical rules of the language.
Know, but you have them already
right.
here.
And they just change they just kind of, I always try to kind of, confine my writing. Okay, Goro, you are Japanese, you're writing in Japanese, so you should know those rules. Don't get over them, okay? And this kind of mentality is already embedded through my Japanese education. So it's kind of very difficult to just go beyond this territory. But if I write in English, I mean, before I know it, my writing sometimes goes beyond this kind of the rules of English. So I don't show my writing to any native speaker of English. If I do so, they try to revise my writing. Oh, this kind of phrase is not in American English, so don't use it. No, this is my English. This is mine. So don't try to revise them. Okay, I'm not American. I was working in a TV media in 1990s, and then I just quit the company at the age of 33 or 4, and then I started studying American literature by just going to a kind of master course of the University of Tokyo in Tokyo. So I started studying American literature kind of late. And then I was a literature scholar, and I was accepted by the University of Hawaii in U.S. And I just went there. I just enrolled in the PhD course of the university as an American literature scholar again. So I was just studying American literature, and some poet teachers came to me and said, "It may be fun to study other people's works. That's okay, but why don't you start writing by yourself?" And then in English, oh yeah, just remember Conrad, just remember Nabokov. English was their foreign language, and then English is your foreign language, but you can try. There are many predecessors. You can be, I don't know, you may be able to be second Nabokov. And that was a very strange encouragement, but I was somehow encouraged. And then so I started writing, and so but yeah, that was the year 2005 or 6, so still like less than 10 years ago. So I should say I'm a new writer. Some of my poems are just like short stories, just as you said. So that means before I know it, my poem writing needs a kind of narrative. And I always wish I could, write something much more wildly, without any clear narrative. But somehow I just find myself trying to rely on a certain clear narrative, even in writing poetry. I think that's where myself as a scholar slides in.
At the same time, you mix different storytellers, and then there's this beauty that there are like two stories mixed in one, like in my favorite poem of yours about camel and camera. And it's exactly that the problem of narrative is solved because you have two narratives. You have a dialogue, and that creates another story. At the same time, which is also maybe interesting and rare, is that experience in your works is older than you. It seems to be like a camel and a camera could be the summary of all 20th century in a way.
Yeah.
have you noticed that by yourself?
I have, actually. It's a kind of another strange habit I have as a poet, but I love imagining what kind of old man I will be in the future, and how I would die on the day of my death. It's a kind of strange, kind of weird habit. So I sometimes
so you're not thinking about your grandmother, but you are thinking about yourself being as old as grandmother.
Sometimes I do think about the how my grandmother, she died actually some years ago, and I was kind of watching the process of her death. So I sometimes think about her. I sometimes think about my other family members who are old enough now, or who just died a long time ago. I sometimes do. But much more often, I try to think about myself as a much older man than I am, and I may be dying. How I'll be dying? What kind of death will be waiting for me? What kind of image I will kind of get in front of me the moment I die? And this kind of obsession with death, I'm not saying that I'm a kind of suicidal person. No, I'm not saying that. But it's a kind of, I should say, it's a kind of duty as a poet to try to forecast, try to imagine his or her own death, waiting for him or her. And so like that's...
it's written maybe even in the title, Responsibilities of the Obsessed. I just wanted to ask you, what are the responsibilities?
So as a poet, as a poet with those obsessions like that, just keeping those obsessions in my mind is not okay, I just believe. And then as a poet, I have to just show those obsessions in the forms of poetry to others, especially to ask them to ask them a question like, okay, this is what my imagination about my own death. How about yours? And then you also gonna die, in the future, and then maybe death is your own kind of subject matter.
Latvian people will hear you in poetry days, in translation by very young Latvian poet. Did you cooperate during process of translation?
I just had, very luckily enough, I had a very wonderful 22-year-old Latvian translator. I just forgot his last name. He is amazingly good. He is so talented. And when I was 22, I was just a dumbass student. But he's still 22, and he is so talented. I envy him, actually. I'm so jealous of his talent. But he read all of my recent poems. I just actually sent him my 7 recent poems. He just read them very closely, and then he just translated them, and also kind of revised his own manuscripts again. So his understanding, his reading was so deep, and then he also kind of checked every kind of quotation I used in my poetry, and then so he knows which authors I just mentioned, and then he also checked those authors' texts. So, his understanding was so kind of, I don't know, sometimes kind of beyond my own understanding of my own poetry.
It's also a responsibility of the obsessed, right?
And obsessed readers. Yeah. So, and that's a kind of one of my ideal readers.